Hello everyone. So as you know, Ireland has taken the role as the European President for the next 6 months up until December. And as I said before, and I've said this many, many times, and of course Ireland has a tradition of peacekeeping for only over 60 years at this point, longer than any other country in Europe, to a very long commitment in many countries to peacekeeping and to upholding peace. And of course Ireland is a neutral country, is not in NATO, is not in any military lines, there's no allegiance to any country. And especially we see conflict, especially in Europe. We see it in Ukraine and Russia, and we see it even in the Middle East too. And of course, as the president of the European Council, etc., you should be trying to promote peace. You should be trying to promote resolutions to conflicts. And I do think Ireland should take a very active role. And I've said this since the beginning of this war, particularly in Europe and Ukraine and Russia, should be taking a particular role in trying to mediate some kind of peace, because obviously Ireland is a neutral country, along with Austria and Switzerland. I do think we should be trying to find some kind of negotiation, some kind of common ground. What I mean by that is to some kind of understanding peace, because if we have a peace that is too favouring one side, it would only start up in 10 years' time again, basically. If we don't find a real lasting peace, because that's what we need, a real lasting peace. But unfortunately, there has been very little discussions, and you think Ireland would be trying to have them discussions, and of course they should try and have these discussions over the next few months, and to try and bring an end to the conflict in Ukraine, along with the United States, along with the rest of Europe, and of course with Ukraine and Russia, to try and find an end to the conflict, because far too many people have been killed. Far too many people have been killed, and it's all senseless. At the end of the day, everybody knows the war is senseless. It's only for the rich and powerful. It's not for the only Joe. Nobody wins in war, basically. Only the military industrial complexes, etc. It's the same in the Middle East too. Ireland should be striving for peace in the Middle East. Because too many innocent people, not even combatants, too many innocent people are suffering consequences. And of course, too, I said this in another video before, that unfortunately war has changed with drones, etc. But not even that, too. Food and oil, electricity is becoming weapons, and that's something that we have to address, and something that we have to talk about, because it's very dangerous when you see that kind of stuff happening, particularly whatever but bombs from airplanes and missiles, etc. But particularly when it comes to holding people's food supply, etc. It's something that needs to be addressed. Blockades, etc., causes famine, etc. We need to work to try and make, because we have huge power, we have huge influence as Ireland, especially the European Council. We can have huge influence on the world to make it better, because we don't want. I think every Irish person would agree in this statement that no Irish person wants to see anybody suffer. Irish people suffered for hundreds of years, suffered terribly many times throughout our history. We don't want to see people suffering, and simple as that. We don't want to see countries suffering. We don't want to see countries blowing each other up. It doesn't benefit anybody. It causes more pain and suffering. And I think Ireland always has to be the voice for peace. And I think this, if we don't seize this opportunity that we have as the President of the European Council, to try and make lasting peace too for Europe and Europe, between Russia and Ukraine particularly, but of course in the Middle East too, and other conflicts too around the world, but particularly in that one, if we can get that one even mediated, even if we can get discussions going, to find some kind of lasting peace, because it has to be lasting peace. It can't be just a temporary peace, because unfortunately in 10 years' time we'll be back in the same situation if we found peace in the morning. For example, if the issues that caused all this wasn't directly solved, that there'll be lasting peace for the next hundreds of years, please God. But we have to get their forces back, getting their forces, and of course it's easier to make a war than peace. But we see what happens. But I do think we should be striving for that. I do think we should be, because we might as well take advantage of the EU presidency. We might as well try and do some good in the world too, in that regard, and try and find some peace in the world, and try and bring peace to the world too. Because Ireland has done a lot in terms of peacekeeping, etc. We sent so many of our sons and daughters. So many of them didn't come back in peacekeeping, to try and make the world a better place, to try and make and that distant memory peace. And that's what we strive for in this country. It's a peaceful resolution to conflicts. We've seen it on our own island. Irish people have huge experience with conflict. But it always has to become a time for peace, and time to sit down and negotiate. And I think Ireland, with the Good Friday Agreement, etc., we have a long history of, we understand it a lot. And conflict, we know about conflict ourselves. But again, I do think it's the best opportunity ever for Ireland to try and make a difference, to try and do something. along with, of course, not ourselves alone, but of course with the United States, with Europe, with Austria, with Switzerland, other countries too that are non-aligned countries, to try and sit people down to have discussions, because that's the only way we're going to get out of this conflict, unfortunately, and the only way we're going to stop the war. If there's negotiations, because at the moment in time when nobody's talking to each other, you're not making any way, basically. So do let me know what you think. Do you agree with that statement? I think a lot of people would agree, because we do have the position at the moment. We can make big influence if we wanted to try and find the solution. Even though both sides hate each other, we have to understand that too. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be like just sitting down and having a discussion. It's going to be a lot to get to that point. But even if we make a start on it, we can get there. But it's about making the effort to try and start it. Let me know what you think. Bye.